10 Mexican culture shocks that surprise Americans. Even if you've traveled before, these will still catch you off guard.
And if you saw our recent video about why living in Mexico can be hard for foreigners, you'll know it's not just the daily inconveniences.
Sometimes it's the cultural differences that really catch people off guard.
So if you're thinking about moving to Mexico or even just visiting, here are 10 things that might surprise you.
And when we say Americans, we're talking about people from the United States.
We know that technically everyone on the continent is American, but we're using the term here the way it's commonly used in the United States. Much love and respect to all of our Latin American viewers.
Just like in the video we recently made about daily inconveniences, this isn't about criticizing Mexico. It's about helping people understand that if you can't handle these culture shocks, Mexico might not be the right place for you.
But if you can embrace them, you'll find that Mexico is one of the most vibrant and welcoming places you could ever live. When you greet someone, you might be used to a quick wave or like a head nod or maybe a handshake. But in Mexico,
get ready for hugs, cheek kisses, and very warm hellos, even if you've only met someone once.
And it's not just family and close friends. Sometimes you'll meet someone at a dinner party or a work event and boom, they're leaning in for the cheek kiss.
Being raised in Latin American families, we were both already used to this, even though we grew up in the United States. Our challenge growing up was knowing when to apply the warm greetings rule and when to just put up your hand and wave hi.
I remember going to school in the US and feeling like a weirdo sometimes when I'd instinctively lean in for a kiss with a friend's mom or my teacher. It just didn't match the local norms. So it was this constant cultural juggle depending on who I was with.
And then you go to a family gathering and not greeting everyone individually is considered very rude.
Ooh, very rude.
Right? You have to go around the room and say hi one by one, or you'll look like you're in a bad mood. And the same thing goes with saying goodbye. I always want to just leave a party and jet out of there.
Yeah, I don't know why you want to do that if you were raised doing the complete opposite.
I don't know.
I was raised that when I leave a party, I need to say goodbye to each and every aunt, friend of the family, cousin, anybody who's at the party. And so even here in San Miguel, when we go to a party and it's time to leave, I instinctively want to go around the room and say goodbye to everybody that's there. And Francisco is more of, let's just leave, nobody will notice, and you can just send a message later saying goodbye to the host. And I'm like, no, we cannot do that. That's just rude.
And I know that you technically shouldn't do that in Mexico, but I just can't get that out of me.
Yeah. It's just part of the warmth here. In general, people in Mexico value connection and familiarity. Even professional relationships can start off with more warmth than you might expect.
Of course, not everyone greets the same way. There are differences by region, age group, and context. In more formal settings, you might still get a handshake, but it's usually paired with strong eye contact and a genuine sense of welcome. Men, even in professional settings, will sometimes do the handshake-hug-handshake combo.
How's that work? Should we reenact it?
We have to almost stand up to do it.
Yeah, because I'm not a man, obviously. How does the man handshake-hug-handshake combo go?
All right, so what you do is you say, hey, how you doing? Shake, let go.
Let go.
Come in for the hug.
Hug.
Little tap on the back, and another shake.
Oh, all of the men here do that.
They all do it.
So let's do it again.
Hey man, how you doing? Like that.
The cheek kiss is usually just one light tap, not a full mouth smooch on the cheek. And yes, it happens between women and between men and women, but rarely between two men. The men do the previous handshake, hug, handshake, unless they're very close family. So it's just a light tap. You don't like on people's faces. Hola. Like that.
Yeah.
Very.
So what are you doing with your hand?
Well, because sometimes I do grab someone's hand and then I go in like this.
Okay. And you hold their hand?
And I hold their hand and I do it.
Oh.
And sometimes I turn my cheek like that. It takes a little getting used to because you don't want to come across as creepy and too much when you just met somebody, especially if it's Francisco with another woman and me with another man. You don't want to come across as creepy.
Right, that's true.
So it's got to be just right.
Takes practice. If you're unsure, just follow the other person's lead. That's a good idea.
Too, yeah. And trust us, once you get used to it, going back to the old quick hey can feel a little sterile, like just impersonal. I don't know, it's just not, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, honestly, now when we go back to the States, I kind of want to just kiss people on the cheek and I have to stop myself.
So if you feel uncomfortable with this kind of close contact with others, Mexico might not be for you.
Outside tourist areas, and even in some tourist areas around Mexico, don't expect people to switch to English.
And honestly, why should they? You're in their country. They speak Spanish here.
We see it all the time. Someone will order tacos in English and the vendor will answer in a full Spanish monologue. It's quite entertaining watching people just stand there nodding like they understood. Of course, we'll step in to help if we see this, maybe after a couple of seconds of uncomfortable awkwardness by the foreigner.
But here's the thing, you don't have to be fluent by any means. You don't have to be fluent. And I think this goes for anywhere that you travel in the world.
Yeah.
You don't have to be fluent. Just learning a few key phrases and greetings, it really goes a long way with the person that you're trying to communicate with because it makes them feel like you're making an effort and acknowledging that they speak another language.
It's not about the perfect grammar, it's about the effort. Even if your Spanish is broken, most people really appreciate that you're trying. So just learn the basic words to get you going.
Yeah.
Even if it's just, habla inglés, you know, simple as that. And then the person might just respond yes and switch to English.
Just don't assume that people will understand you right off the bat because they may not. It shows respect. It creates a bridge between two different cultures. You'll find that people are way more open and helpful when you try to meet them halfway. And
let's be honest, if you live here and make no effort to learn the language, you're missing out on so much. Friendships, humor, deeper connections, just the everyday life. You're going to be in your own little bubble, missing out.
Also, there's a huge difference between being a tourist and being a resident. Tourists might get a pass, but if you live in Mexico long term and never learn Spanish, it can come across as entitled.
And trust us, the more you practice, the more confident you'll get. And suddenly those taco stand monologues won't seem so intimidating.
So if you're hoping to get by speaking only English everywhere you go, Mexico might not be the perfect place for you. In the US, we're used to having a pretty generous bubble of space around us. And that got even stronger with the whole 6 feet apart rule during COVID. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah. But in Mexico, that bubble is a lot smaller, sometimes even non-existent.
Whether you're standing in line, chatting with somebody, or waiting for the elevator, people might stand way closer than you're used to, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be aggressive or invasive. It's just part of the cultural norm. Physical closeness isn't a big deal here, but if you're not used to it, it feels awkward.
And also, waiting in line is like a thing for us in the US, right? So you wait your turn, you get in line, you wait your turn. And here, if you stand there waiting your turn, and there is no line and there's people everywhere, people will just cut in front of you and whoever gets heard first may be the first person who gets their order taken.
Right.
And you have to, I sometimes struggle with this, not so much anymore, but when we first moved here, because I would wait my turn because I'm a rule follower. And so I was always used to standing in line, waiting my turn, and then I place my order or whatever it may be at the stand that's selling vegetables or fruit or whatever. And women would come up and they would just cut right in front of me and then they would say, señora, quiero dos frutas. And I'd be like, what about me? And you learn that sometimes you have to be a little aggressive.
You do. And then sometimes there is a system, there's an order system, but there is no line formed. And so you might see a cluster of people just kind of surrounding wherever they are, whether it's the fruit stand or the taco stand or whatever. And what you do there is you have to say, who's the last person in line? And that's where a little Spanish will go a long way for you.
Yes, true.
You say, who's last? And then somebody will go, it's me. And then you know that you're after this person.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about anybody else. And then somebody else behind you will come in and say, who's last? And then you say, me. And then you just go
True.
one by one. But if you're not expecting that and you're looking for the line, you're going to be clueless.
Yeah. I remember one time standing in line at the grocery store and someone stood very close to me, like right behind me, and I was like, why is this person so close to me? And I would inch a little bit forward and they would inch a little bit forward, and I wasn't understanding that it wasn't that they wanted to stand close to me, it's just that's the normal amount of space in between people. And I think it comes from, if you leave too much space, someone will just cut in front of you. It's just how it is. It's not that people are being pushy, it's that the concept of personal space, it's not as rigid as it is in the US.
And honestly, over time, you get used to it. You stop flinching when someone leans in or brushes your shoulder. It just becomes normal most of the time. I have to admit,
Yeah.
I'll still turn around just to be sure there's no pickpocketer around. Most likely there isn't, but it's just...
Yeah. But it's always good to be safe. But if you're someone who really values your space and you're easily thrown off by physical closeness, Mexico might not be the perfect place for you.
Tamales! Gas! If you live in Mexico, you'll hear these things shouted or blasted from loudspeakers almost every single day.
In fact, we have a video of the guy who goes around and sells elote and garbanzos.
We do.
And we'll insert it so that you can hear him, because he's one of my favorites, actually. And he's been in this neighborhood for years, ever since we moved here.
Yeah.
And we've seen him get old with us. We'll put the video in so you can hear him. So trucks, carts, and even guys on bicycles cruise through the neighborhoods, each with their own signature sound. It is so cool because I think it's one of the most charming things about living in Mexico.
The first time I heard elotes echoing through the street, I seriously thought it was some kind of opera singer.
He really does have his way. But it's just a delicious corn on the cob snack walking down the street.
Then there's the propane gas trucks. They sound like a video game driving down the street. They blast their music on a loop.
And we have to mention the famous metal recycling truck. That, I think everyone, well, maybe not everyone has heard this one, but it's pretty famous.
Yeah, if you spend any time in Mexico.
And if you spend any time in Mexico, you will hear it because it's the same recording all over Mexico. It plays a recording of a little girl listing all the metal items that they'll happily take off your hands. In fact, there was a reel recently that I saw on Facebook or Instagram that showed who that little girl is now, because now she's grown up.
Yeah.
And she was the daughter of the metal collector, and she recorded this video, and it's become the sound of the metal collector all over Mexico.
And she's something like 40 years old now?
Yeah. And what about the knife sharpening guy?
What's the sound for that one?
The knife sharpening guy has a flute, and he goes,
That's right. Yeah.
Is it a recording though? He's not playing a flute.
He does. He has a whistle.
It's a whistle. It's a whistle, not a flute. So it makes that sound, and he's riding his bike, and then he has a chain on his bike that he uses when he pedals. The chain activates, which is what he uses. What do you call it? The band to sharpen knives.
Right.
But I've never done it because I've heard that they don't do a great job of sharpening your knives. So I've never personally used the service, but it's there and you hear it at least a couple of times a week.
And there's also the sweet potato guy, the
camote.
jams guy, yeah. And he walks around with the steamer that keeps the yams warm. And then once in a while, the pressure builds up and he'll release the vent, and it sounds like a train whistle almost.
Yeah, but how does he carry it around? Is it on a bike? Is it on
it's on a cart.
It's on a cart, and so he just wheels it around.
Mm-hmm. These sounds can be jarring at first, especially early in the morning or during a nap. But over time, they just fade into the rhythm of daily life.
I think you're going to learn to love them if you move to Mexico, because I think it's one of the most charming things about this place.
So if you're the type who craves peace and quiet at all hours, or you're sensitive to neighborhood noises, Mexico's street life might take some serious getting used to.
Or you might just fall in love with the soundtrack of daily life like we have. Forget the customer is always right mentality, because that doesn't really fly here.
Yeah. Instead, get ready to hear, no se puede, it can't be done, more than you're used to.
And it's not meant to be rude or dismissive, it's just how things are structured. Sometimes the answer really is no, because the system just doesn't allow flexibility.
Or the person has been instructed to do certain things a certain way and they can't deviate because they'll get in trouble. They don't have the flexibility to, kind of bend the rules.
Make executive decisions.
Yeah, make executive decisions, exactly. And other times the rules are bendable, but only if you know how to ask and who to ask. That's key, how and who to ask.
This is where cultural adaptation really has to kick in. You might need to go to a different window, talk to a different person, or maybe even come back on a different day, because you're not going to get anywhere with that particular person. So sometimes you need to just start over with someone else, maybe even on another day.
And sometimes all three of those things apply. It can be a little confusing, but over time you get the rhythm. It's less get it done now, and more, let's see what's possible eventually.
The key is patience, not taking it personally. Getting flustered or demanding will only make things worse. That's for sure.
Be respectful, be persistent, and know when to let it go and try again another day.
So yeah, if you're used to instant service, 24/7 hotlines, have it your way attitude, Mexico might take some getting used to.
But if you can embrace the pace and the quirks, you'll find people are generally kind and helpful, just in a different way. Kissing in the park, cuddling at a bus stop, making out at the local convenience store.
Yep, PDA is everywhere in Mexico, and it's not just teenagers. Couples of all ages don't really hold back.
Coming from the US, where people usually keep things a little bit more low-key in public, this can be surprising.
But here's the thing, it's not considered weird or inappropriate, it's just affection. People aren't shy about expressing love publicly.
And honestly, it's kind of sweet. Once you get used to it, it feels pretty normal. You might even catch yourself doing that same thing.
I've noticed that at the B&B, when we set up the breakfast table, for example, when people from the United States or Canada, they come, couples sit across from one another and have breakfast. And it's very different when it's a Mexican couple. Mexican couples, no matter how old they are, will sit next to each other.
Yeah, side by side.
Side by side. And it's one of the observations that I've made throughout the years, that it's almost a given every single time that a Mexican couple will sit side by side and they'll sit next to each other and they'll be very affectionate, and she'll serve the coffee and stir his sugar in the coffee and all of this stuff. And American couples will sit across from each other.
Yeah.
Just something we've noticed. So if you're someone who gets uncomfortable seeing people kiss in public, or if you're used to affection staying behind closed doors, Mexico might challenge your comfort zone.
Hey, love is in the air here. Literally, just look around.
Whether it's opening a bank account, applying for residency, or registering your car, expect multiple trips, plenty of stamps, and lots of copies. So many copies.
You'll often be told you need one more signature, one more copy, or that you filled out the wrong form, even if you followed the instructions exactly. I've been told to pay for a permit application for our inn, Antigua Capilla, at a different building located half a mile away. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
You go to one office, you're ready to pick up the document, and they say, oh, it's 300 pesos. Where do I pay? Oh, you have to go down the street to the other side of the roundabout. And so you got to get in your car, go pay, and come back 45 minutes later to pick up that document.
Yeah. And sometimes it could also be that you speak to this person and he says you need these 3 things, and then you come back the next day and you speak to this person and she says, no, I need these 3 things, but you forgot to bring the 4th thing. Well, the guy yesterday didn't tell me I needed that 4th thing. Well, she said, well, we need the 4th thing. And so then off you go to your house to go get the 4th thing.
Yeah. And that'll happen too at the consulates in the States. If you're trying to get your residency up there, it's no different. You might go to one person and they'll tell you one thing, and like Antonieta said, next day it's something else. Or if you'll go from consulate to consulate, it just changes.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. And don't be surprised if the person at the desk says, you need to come back tomorrow, even if it's their lunch break and you've already waited an hour.
Honestly, one of the best things we ever did was start carrying a binder or a folder with everything we could possibly need whenever we deal with anything official.
Yeah, and you need to have the latest copy of everything. You have to have the latest month, the latest printout of the electricity bill, not 2 months from now, last month's or this month's bill. So you have to keep updating your folder.
And wherever you go, most places don't have copy machines. And so if you have your originals and they need copies, then you ask, well, can you make a copy? They'll say no.
No, they won't make a copy for you.
So you'll have to
go find a copy place, or you'll have to go home and make a copy. Copies of passports, your CURP number, proof of address, blood type, you name it. So if you're the kind of person who expects quick digital forms, online booking, or things to be streamlined, Mexico old school paperwork process might wear on you. It can sometimes.
Church bells at dawn, fireworks during the day, and street processions that stop traffic.
Religion is everywhere in Mexico, not just in churches, but in homes, taxis, businesses, even neighborhood fiestas.
And don't be surprised if an entire street shuts down for a religious festival, with music, food, fireworks, and prayers. We just had ours, actually.
Yeah, our street closed down for a festival, and they closed the main street, and taxis couldn't get up here, and there was just no going through it. But that's just for one day, for maybe 8 hours, and then it's over, and you just live with it.
And if we want to drive out with our car, we can't. That day, walking only.
Yeah. So even if you're not religious, it's worth knowing how important faith is in daily life here, especially for major life events like birthdays, weddings, and funerals.
But if you prefer a more secular lifestyle or get frustrated by faith-based holidays affecting schedules, this cultural difference might be too much for you to handle.
Or you might find yourself lighting a candle for someone you love.
Credit cards and apps work sometimes, but don't count on them everywhere. In Mexico, cash is still king, especially at local shops, markets, and street food stands.
Even some restaurants and mid-sized businesses still don't accept cards, and that includes some tourist spots. We recently noticed the most popular churreria in town, a very famous restaurant, often with lines out the door, still only accepts cash. And if you're used to tapping your phone or a card for everything, you'll definitely need to adjust.
But once you get used to it, paying in pesos starts to feel normal, and honestly, sometimes faster.
Sometimes. And sometimes you go to a place that takes credit cards, and all of a sudden their system's down, and we can't take credit cards today. And you're like, well, how do I buy this thing then? And they're like, cash. I'm like, I don't have any cash. Well, sorry, then you can't buy it. And you're like, and you just have to go, okay, I'll be back some other day then.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that the credit card machines go down because it happens to us too in our business. But we get around that by having multiple bank machines. We don't rely on just one, we have several. But many other places just have that one, and then you're just stuck with either paying in cash or leaving without your product.
In Mexico, family and community are huge, and not just in size, but in importance. Sunday lunches, birthdays that turn into block parties, cousins who feel like siblings, religious events where neighbors literally invite you over to participate. It's all a part of the rhythm of life here.
You're not just meeting someone's partner, you're probably meeting their entire extended family, and maybe even their neighbors too. And the upside, people tend to be incredibly warm. Once you're in, you are in.
Didn't you just go down, what was it? It was Viernes de Dolores. It was the Friday of Sorrows. Last Friday before Easter week, you decided to go into town to go look at some altars, and you were coming home, and one of our neighbors, what happened?
He just saw me coming in, and he had set up an altar also, and so he said, hey, come on in. And his wife offered me a little ice cream, and before we knew it, we were chatting for half an hour there, just, you know, about anything.
Like, where's Francisco? Why is he taking so long?
Yeah. But it's great, you know, you'll see that moving to Mexico, you'll never be alone if you don't want to be. You step out the door and the neighbors will start conversations with you, and before you know it, you might be invited over for a cup of coffee and so on. And before you know it, you've got lifelong friends.
If you're coming from a more individualistic culture, the closeness can be surprising at first.
But for many of us, it's one of the most beautiful parts of living in Mexico.
Some of these cultural differences take getting used to, others you might just fall in love with. Either way, knowing what to expect can make the transition a whole lot smoother, and that's why we make these videos to help you with the transition and knowing what might be coming your way when and if you move to Mexico. So let us know in the comments what cultural differences surprised you the most.
And be sure to check out this video next, where we talk about 10 daily struggles of living in Mexico.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.